All right, today I'm going to show you how to use the Hue Bridge setup, the Hue config creator, and we're going to basically set it up from scratch. So the first thing you'll see when you open the screen is, when you open the program, is this screen, which will let you either load a progress from a version that you've already started, or essentially start from scratch, or save your progress if you've been working on a couple of things and you want to save where you're at and restart later on. But we'll just go through the whole thing right now. The first step is to discover your bridges or your bridge. So if you hit this, it'll search your network and will find a Hue bridge if you have one. So you select the bridge just like that, and you hit Create User. And then it's going to ask you to push the button on your Hue bridge, which I will push mine. And then you have about 15 to 30 seconds to hit continue. I think 30 seconds. And if you hit continue, you'll get a notification that it's successfully connected to the bridge, and to click next to continue up in the right corner. So now you can see the different groups that you have on your bridge. I'm going to select the tiki bar. It'll tell you how many lights you have in that group. If for some reason you don't see them all, or you want to refresh just to double check your groups, you can click refresh. But we're selecting the tiki bar and clicking next. Now it's going to ask you to choose the video that you would like to use with the light controller. For this version, we're using the video that I've supplied. It's called the volcano_loop. So you can find that wherever it is that you downloaded it, and click open, and it will show you the video. If you have an existing configuration, you can load it, but right now we're just going to say next. And this is where pretty much all of the hard work is. This is where we set our keyframes that will change the lights based on the video. So I've already defined some scenes that go with the video. I have day, I have night, I have sunrise, and I have sunset. Bright is just a setting I use in the bar when I want to have the lights up to full. So I'm not going to actually use that for this. And these are regular scenes. You can also define special scenes, which I'll show you shortly. But since we're going to start the video in daytime, I'm going to select day. I'm going to say add trigger point, and it'll basically add the day scene at the very beginning. So now I'm just going to scrub through the video. And what I like to do is, the next scene that you would normally have would be like sunset, right? Because you can see the sun is setting, and then we go to night. But what will happen if you just pick sunset, say here, which we can do, is that the software is going to do a transition from one point to the next. So what will happen is, halfway through this, you're going to end up with sort of a half sunset when you're still fully in daylight. So what I do is I find the point where I want the transition to start happening, so you can kind of see sunset is starting, and then I set another daytime trigger point there. So that way it's essentially transitioning from day to day, which is nothing, and then doesn't start the actual transition until we start getting into sunset. And then I look at when we're fully in night, and then I'm going to set a nighttime trigger point there. Now the next step is going to be our volcano eruption. So we're going to look at when the volcano actually starts to erupt, and it's going to be right about, we can jump in 5-second increments, by the way. So let's say right here is where we're going to have our volcano eruption. But we don't have a volcano eruption scene, so we're going to go to Special Scenes. We're going to create one. I'm going to select all my lights. I want them to be red. You can choose a color if it's somewhere else, but I think it defaults to red. And I'm going to name this scene volcano_eruption. That used to be more important But actually with the new version of the light controller, it's not as important because the button that lets you trigger the volcano is preset. So you can really name it whatever you want, but I like to name it this. You can set the minimum brightness of the lights. So let's dim them down a little bit, say 10. And I don't want it to be super bright like a thunderstorm, so I want it to be more of a pulsing light. So let's say I'm going to put the maximum brightness at about maybe like a third brightness, somewhere in here. You can try it and see how it works. I'm going to have it pulse anywhere from every 1 second to, let's say, 3 seconds, roughly. The test animation is not currently working. It's a feature I'm planning to add in the future. So now we'll save this. And now we can see that the special scene selection, we have the volcano eruption, and we can add it there at the beginning of the volcano eruption. So now we figure out when we want that pulsing red light to stop, and I usually stop it somewhere around in here when the smoke is kind of dying down. So now we can go back to our regular scenes and pick our night scene and add another trigger point there. The next kind of major event is the thunder and lightning storm. So let's look at where that's going to happen. There it is right in here. So again, we're going to create a special scene, and we're going to call it Thunderstorm. And I'll select all my lights. You don't have to use all the lights, but I'm just going to do that for this. And I'm going to pick like a blue color to change the lights to. And because it's a lightning storm, I'm going to have a little bit more of a dramatic brightness change. So we're going to go from, say, the 20s all the way up to almost full brightness, and a little faster interval. I'd say anything from like half a second up to probably 2 seconds, so that there's quite a bit of lightning happening. And we'll save that and add that trigger point there. And then we can look at when the rain stops. Right about there, and we'll go back to our regular scenes and go back to our night scene. Now the next point is really going to be sunrise. So again, I don't want it to start transitioning to sunrise too soon. So I'm going to figure out where sunrise kind of starts, around in here. I'm going to put another night trigger, and then I'm going to look at where I want my sunrise lighting to kind of be, and I'll add a trigger point there. And then once we hit full daylight, I'm going to add another trigger point for day. What's right there. And then basically it's daytime till the end of the video. So we'll add a final point there. So that's kind of the basic setup of the trigger points. So let's go next. And if you wanted to, you could save your progress here and come back to it later, but let's just go next. And this shows us our config file in progress. This is what the light controller is going to use later. There's a few options here if you want to loop your video, which I do, and also if you want to create a web interface, which lets you control the thunderstorm and the volcano from a website. So if you wanted to do it on your phone or your iPad, for example, you don't have to use the laptop or computer that you're running the video from. There's also a logo that it needs the location to, so that's included in the files. I just show the path there. Basically, you've got all the information. You can see where your video is. Everything's in there. Now, I'd validate the config file just to make sure that everything looks good. And it'll say configuration is valid. And really the next thing to do is just save it. You can copy it to a clipboard, you can export it, but really all you need to do is save it. So if you click save, it'll ask you where you want to save it. It saves it with the name of the video that it's linked to. So we use the volcano loop. So that's what it's going to come preset as. Just keep that the same. And you can decide where to save it. This is my stolen idle light controller file. So it would save it in here. And you can click save. Let's just go to the desktop for now and click save. And then you should get it already exists. You want to replace it. I'm sure it will replace it. And you'll get a confirmation that it's been saved. And basically, at that point, you're done with the HueBridge setup. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at our light controller, and that's going to use the configuration that you just created. So I'm going to start it up. And you can see, if you're looking behind me, that the lights in the bar just changed. So you'll get a notification that it's connected to your bridge. You also have, that's if you have an existing config file. If you don't, if this is your first time, what you're going to do is you should get a notification to load your configuration file. So let's click load config file. And I'm going to just load the one that I've already made for my video. I'm going to say import configuration. And there, because it has the path to your video in the config, it should load it automatically. You can also manually select the video if you want to, if you need to do that for some reason, or if you want to use a different video. You're not tied to my video, but the thunderstorm and the volcano features work with my video. The next thing I wanted to kind of show you is the show on display feature. This is, obviously you're probably not going to be playing this from your laptop unless you're connected to your monitor in your bar with an HDMI cable. But if you want to, you can AirPlay. So let's go to screen mirroring. And I'm going to screen mirror to my Tiki Bar TV, which you can't see behind me, but is basically has opened up AirPlay and is now showing the video on the Tiki Bar television. You might also need to adjust some of your audio files as well to do that. So actually, I'm screen mirroring, but now I need to click Show on Display. Sorry. Show on Display will then put the video and it'll maximize it to full screen on your extended display. When you screen mirror, I always do an extended display, not actually mirroring, but extending it to a second monitor. So that way it will show on the second monitor and you still have your program on your main screen. All right, so now it's playing on the separate screen, and there's a few things we can do. We can just let it play. Your bar light should be synced to the video. You can also trigger events. So let's say we wanted to trigger the volcano. If I click volcano, it'll jump to the volcano eruption, and it will basically run about a 60-second volcano video, that portion of the volcano video where the eruption is, and the lights will be flashing based on your config file setup. So you'll get some red flashing lights or however you have it set up. But that will just run for the duration of the volcano explosion, which is essentially a 60-second event. So we're going to let it run through. I'll probably edit this down so that we can not have to sit here for 60 seconds and watch it, but you get the idea. And once the embers come through, the sort of dies down, and what should happen is it should jump back to the point where you triggered the volcano and reset the lights to that point as well. So it's kind of dying down. There we are. We're back to daytime, and the lights in the bar have reset. The next effect that you can do is the thunderstorm effect. It's very similar to the volcano. It basically jumps to our thunder and lightning storm, and the lights in the bar sync with the lightning flashes on screen. And again, it's basically a 1-minute event that kind of builds up in intensity, and the lights in the bar are triggering every time we see a big lightning flash. So it's pretty immersive, actually. It works pretty well. And again, as before, what's going to happen is once this thunderstorm finishes, it will jump back to the point at which you triggered it. If the software is working correctly, you shouldn't be able to trigger an event while an event is happening. It should disable the buttons while the actual event is happening. So now we're back to daytime. The thunderstorm's ended. So that's the gist of it. Essentially, what's going to happen is that the events that you create, if they're a thunderstorm or a lightning or something else, if you have got some other thing you want to do at a specific point in the video, the special events are how you're going to trigger those. And they do not transition from your regular light scenes. So if you've got a volcano eruption, set at a certain point in the video, it is not going to do a smooth transition to the volcano eruption. It's going to trigger right at that point. That's how the special scenes work, whether they're animated or not, because sometimes you just don't want that transition. But otherwise, all of the trigger points that you set up with your regular scenes are going to do smooth lighting transition, so it's not a jarring transition between day and sunset or sunset and night, etc. And that's it. That's the walkthrough. If you have any problems, let me know, and I'll try to resolve them as I keep iterating. This is beta software. There's definitely going to be some issues as I roll it out. The biggest one is that Apple software sandboxes access to the user's information. So sometimes I've hit problems trying to save files or open files because it doesn't give me access to areas of the disk that I might need. I think I've solved those issues. Once you grant it access, it should save that as a token and be able to access your video again. But if that is an issue, let me know, and I'll try to see if I can come up with a solution.